let's take a look at the docket. See what video I should make next. Let's see. Are Luigi's Mansion fans hypocrites? You know, I still don't have any footage for this. At this rate, I don't think I'll ever make the video. I'll skip it. Why, Hey Pigman is the best in this series. I don't think anyone's ever gonna be ready for this video, least of all me. It'd be best if I just got rid of it. Why, Super Smash Bros. Needs more Fire Emblem characters. Wait, isn't this the joke one? Yeah, it is. Why haven't I got rid of this yet? I'll do it tomorrow. I'm too busy not doing that right now. So, I guess that just leaves a what? What is this doing here? I already played your game, figuratively and literally, and I already made your video. Put this back on my list. It's not funny. Okay, that's right. The video does kind of stink, but I don't want to do it again. But it's the only option. No, wait, no, wait, no, wait! Okay. How is it going, everybody? I'm Bearhead2, and welcome to another B-tier review. I'm going to change that name one day, just not today. Anyway, today I'm going to be re-reviewing this game. Yes, I said re-reviewing. The reason is because my original video stinks. It has a lot of problems. So I'm choosing to remake the video from the ground up to rectify any previous problems. If only this game would do the same. And because I'm remaking the video, I played the game a second time to remake, re-break, otherwise reform my opinions. I'll try my best to use footage from the second playthrough, but if I don't, it'll look like this. But if you've forgotten how my reviews work, they're devilishly simple. I choose 10 categories I believe best represent the game and score them on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and 5 being rather average. So with that out of the way, it's time to yet again grab your assorted merchandise, your assorted fast food items, your assorted novelty wristwatches which are surprisingly robust, and your assorted large kitchen utensils. It's time to jump right back on in. I hate this. To start, gameplay. To me, gameplay is a gameplay by itself, and level design is a gameplay in the context of the rest of the game, in addition to actual level design. But I'll get to that category next. The wheel has not been reinvented. You can run, you can jump, you can sprint, you can crouch, you can interact with things. But generic doesn't automatically mean bad, but what really matters is what you do. And I'm reminded of the original Luigi's Mansion. You can call it free roam, and yeah, you can go anywhere, but there's a list of things you need to do in order to progress. Or alternatively, you can clip through a wall, fall down to the basement, pause a lot, and beat the nefarious Ghostman of a final boss that has something to do with the color purple. Barring that, the idea of doing things elicits ideas of the perfect video game. But I think I'm forgetting something. This numbskull over here! I'm not sure this guy has terrible game design, being a get-out-of-jail-free card for stressful situations, more on that later, or a genius because he can juggle his power. I am leaning a bit more towards the former. He can do a few things himself, like causing all the enemies to ignore you and not kill you. But if you can even upgrade him, you can do a voice box which causes animatronics to run away from you. I mean, stun animatronics, eyes which allow you to see collectibles, which doesn't make you better but is nice, and of course, new hands which allow you to open certain gates. I love contextually dependent abilities. I love them so much. But that's a common pitfall. But the play can be upgraded too. You can select a camera that provides a flashbang that stuns everything in the vicinity and charges automatically, and also a laser blaster that also charges automatically, provides 6 shots. That doesn't mean you can land them. It's pretty easy. Although the idea of running around, doing things, trying not to die, and hiding seems kind of generic, the amount of interesting things you can do doesn't seem to be all that high. But there does seem to be some promise. So I'll give gameplay a the gameplay in the context of the game and the actual level design, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the game doesn't utilize its more unique mechanics very well. It boils down to a literal gate. As for the more generic mechanics, well, the game utilizes moving pretty well, I don't know. Although the game does have some interesting things to do, it's more often than not annoying to do, thanks to the staff bots. Most of the game's level design seems to rest in enemy placement, which I just mentioned has the nasty habit of being annoying. The rooms, though, really have interesting things to do, or fun obstacle courses. Usually they're more fun to look at than to experience. And most areas are quite small, so lack any real depth most of the time. The level design is sometimes annoying, most of the time perfectly playable but uninteresting, on rare occasions, fun. It's functional, but not necessarily fun. So that's a... So if you happen to be pulling a Patrick Star that is living under a rock, you should know this game has graphical options. By the second time I played, I'll play the game at its highest settings, and man, it looks pretty good. Yet, I know of a mystical higher quality, one much more elusive and mysterious. The magical PlayStation 5 setting. Now, I don't own a PlayStation 5 or the copy of this game on PlayStation 5, not crazy enough to spend $750 on console I won't use, that game I already own. I best look at it and think, man, that's a lot of money. But to see this rare setting, I have something much cheaper in mind. Yar! Okay, maybe not piracy, but I have the next best thing. Dumb, stupid ass, get out of here! I hate you! I hate you! I hate you! Dumb, stupid ass! Ah! This looks like basically exactly the same. Apparently, this game has bosses. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one? Is this a boss fight? And this one. Boss fight should contain a combination of a grandiose scale, a mechanic, music, and cutscenes. This game has 3 of the 4, but never at once. The one lacking area is the scale. The boss fight with the biggest scale is the DJ Music Man fight, but he's even the center of the fight and rarely does anything. The fights are hard to differentiate from the rest of the game for multiple reasons. In addition to them lacking scale, because they introduce boss fights a hard time on their own, probably because the boss fights are hard to tell apart from the rest of the game has other non-boss fight introducing cutscenes, making it hard to tell those apart. All but one is any meaningful music. Your ambience does not qualify as boss fight music, even if it is unique. And all but 3 have mechanics to them, although finding a special interactable object is really stretching the definition of mechanic. None of these factors by themselves would signify a boss fight. The only boss fight in the game with more than one of these factors at once is the DJ Music Man one, which is a good candidate for the most boss fighty of the boss fights. Although having a boss fight basically just be more of the game isn't inherently a bad thing, it does make them bad at being boss fights. They don't test your mettle, at best they test your patience. I'll give this category a... For the game's 1-year anniversary, to put the soundtrack on Spotify, making it all that much easier to listen to it on YouTube instead. And to finally sitting down listening to it, and as much as it almost pains me to admit it, I think it's pretty good. I quite liked it.
Hey, what do you got there, Peter?
At 5 Nights at Freddy's Security Breach original soundtrack.
My biggest gripe against the music is the ambience. There's a lot of it, which does make sense, but most of it isn't particularly interesting to listen to. Most of the time it's just kinda noise. But what is there, what is interesting, actually is pretty darn good. Sure, I'm not in love with the game's soundtrack, but I will give it a 7.8 out of 10, too much ambience. Let's just go with the... I don't think this game is very replayable. Rich, I know I could have gotten to play the game more than once, but is there any reason to? The reasons I do are probably because I want to see what changes were made to the game since I last played, and this video. But those reasons, especially after the game stopped being updated, aren't reasons for you to do the same thing. Unless you find the game fun enough to replay, which I feel isn't true more often than not, you'll have no reason to. In one way, the game incentivizes you not to play it again. A story is great to experience the first time, and unless the story is exceptionally good, more boring the second time. The magic has already been lost. The more story-centric a game is, the more it's probably exasperated, and this game is kind of story-centric. But this game has one more inherent problem. This game being a horror game... Oh. Well, I stand corrected. But for the sake of argument, let's ignore this. It's probably wrong anyway. So this game being a horror game means that playing a section more than once diminishes the horror because you already know what you need to do to beat that section. Predictability isn't scary, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And chances of me playing certain sections multiple times because I keep dying, but I'm getting ahead of myself again. Knowledge on the subject in a horror game removes the fear of the unknown and breeds confidence. The only reason you have to play the game again is if you want to experience it again, but the reasons I mentioned, that design may not be very strong. Anything you haven't already done could be easily done in the post-game. So I guess I'll have to give this a... I expected after a second playthrough to have my opinion on the difficulty go down, but even though I knew what I was doing, there were still some instances of me dying multiple times. But was it due to the fact I didn't know what I was doing, or me being careless, or is the game just too hard? If I had to choose one, I say carelessness, but I'd argue instead the game is more aggravating than difficult. The majority of things jump scaring you are staff bots, but they don't kill you, rather they inconvenience you. Their sheer volume and the range for which they can jump scare you will prove to be the most annoying. But as for the difficulty itself, it's pretty average. It's definitely not too hard, but it's definitely not too easy. It's pretty unremarkable, actually. Strangely though, the game has no difficulty progression of any kind. It's as hard at the beginning as at the end. It's kinda weird, isn't it? But overall, I think I'll just give difficulty a... Guys, I have a confession. I didn't play the post-game this time. My main goal was to blow up and act like I didn't know nobody. My main goal was just to beat the game and not much more. This means I have to go with my original opinion, but that isn't a bad thing considering I thought it was pretty good. The post-game allows you to do the rest stuff you weren't able to, and even has exclusive content, the retro CDs. But I don't like those things. They are some of the most frustrating, cumbersome... Now isn't the time for that. Where was I? Oh yeah. The post-game is literally just more of the game. If I have a hard time going wrong with that idea, I'll give it a... My original explanation for this category was lengthy and not very well thought out, but that's why I'm here, to fix these issues. I've not quite been thick on the subjects of the original video, but that doesn't mean I actually know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let me provide a more concise explanation. I don't think the game is very scary, but I can't tell if that's because I'm desensitized to it or the game just isn't. But let's just assume it's the game's fault. It's easier that way. There is, with one possible exception, not a single thing on this planet that can, by itself, make something scary. Horror is the combination of things. And I've come up with 3 things I believe could work for the series past that the game doesn't use. Although they could be really applied to any horror game, but let's ignore that. Those 3 things are atmosphere, unpredictability, and stress. Although I do quite like this game's atmosphere, it isn't a scary atmosphere. It seems to be more concerned with its art direction than anything else. Look at this. Even though I like it, it isn't very scary. There's one reason for that. It's this. The one thing that could, by itself, make something scary is, I believe, perhaps the single most fundamental thing in a horror game, and that is limiting visual information. Darkness is the simplest, easiest, most believable, and most common thing to use. I mean, even crappy $1 Steam horror games get it right, but here, the amount of photons this game is too darn high! But as for the spooky things you hear, it's not much better. The ambient music tracks, searching the definition of music, don't really add much. But they're those random voice clips you hear. Some of them are simple statements.
Want an autograph?
This area is off limits.
Rock and roll!
Some are requests.
I'll take you to your parents.
Hey kid, come on out. We're only trying to help.
Hey kid, come on out. We're only trying to help.
But the minority are actual threats.
I will find you.
You are nothing!
Gregory!
It's possible that if there were more threats, it could help, but as it stands, they don't really add much. All they do is tell you if there's enemies in the room, which, unless you just got there, removes any element of surprise. Then there's the sound effect. While may suffice as a mini jump scare in the first game, here it only served to detriment. The player only has to listen for the sound effect to know that they need to start defending themselves. If it weren't in the game, of course the players remain a little bit more on their toes, listening for running and footsteps. Assuming, of course, your enemies will shut up for long enough to not give away the location.
Over here.
The game is also very predictable. Sure, the system of characters teleporting between cameras really wouldn't work very well here, but there must be some ways to make the game more sporadic. Even the ways your enemies move are very simple. Even if you do get spotted, you can quite easily defend yourself through use your buddy pal, your friend, your chum, your laser blaster, and your camera. The risk of dying is simply too low most of the time, and things are too abusable, lowering the risk, thus lowering your stress. The game really throws enough action to make you stressed out. Not to mention some jump scares easy to see coming, moving the stress of them happening. But there is one thing this game does to make you stressed out. The one fear this game preys upon. The fear of losing progress. A good number of times in the game, you find there's something near a save station and think, oh, I'll do that first, and oops, now you can't use it. Or maybe there's a save station placed in a spot you can't easily see it, so you end up forgetting about it, and then you die, and you lose all your progress. But now I'm going on a tangent. Another thing is character design. Do you think my enemies and this guy, I love consistency, aren't great? Let's start with these two. I believe that every character in these games that can kill you, with one exception, follow two principles. The Uncanny Valley in this case doesn't really seem to do very much. The designs are too cartoonish and too bright and colorful to really be all that scary. This series made the characters appear almost somewhat child-friendly. Child-friendliness isn't unknown in this franchise, though. To give a basic example, an anthropomorphic cartoon bear with a bow tie and a top hat sounds adorable, and it is, but this looks more creepy and disturbing. It seems the Uncanny Valley cups of child-friendliness and makes it disturbing instead. But in our case, because the Uncanny Valley isn't doing much, it's not doing much corrupting, making it almost appear somewhat child-friendly. These, though, I believe are the two better designed ones. It's suspicious that's the two redesigns, not the two OCs. Speaking of which, in addition to the problems I've already mentioned, each one has a glaring issue. Let's start with the lesser of the two evils. She's fuzzy! She's hairy! Let's check fuzzy is more in common with a kitten than being scary. It makes it look adorable. Okay, not that I actually think that, just maybe kind of looks like it. But as for him, let's get a closer look. It's in my opinion the eyes the most important part of the Uncanny Valley effect. But he has glasses! I can't see his eyes! I honestly think if he didn't have his glasses, his character design would improve. As for the rest of the characters in this game, I don't really care about them. I don't care about you, I don't care about you, I don't really care about you, I don't care about you, but then we get to the staff bots. They look like they're modeled after mannequins, but there seems to be a complete misunderstanding as to what makes a mannequin scary. It's a sort of realism. Staff bots are a great example of character design in this game being too cartoony. They don't even have legs! Then of course there's a get off the screen, get it off, get it off, get it off! Clearly, she's the most terrifying character in this game, but I rest easy at night knowing that women don't actually exist. I, for one, have never seen one. But I shouldn't discount the character's personalities or body language. They're important as well. So in the interest of time, I'm telling you how well I think these things work for these characters in my opinion. It's a complicated series of as. Doesn't count. Does this count? I don't know. If it does, then doesn't count. And those biggest things I mentioned about the horror. The last thing this game could have done to make this better overall, but it didn't. And the thing I found out with the courage to get this game's horror, This category is kind of weird. I'm not going to rescore this one. I won't keep you in suspense. This category is getting a... But why? Well, for one, the game updated, but more importantly, I wasn't planning on rescoring this one. The way I see it, facing it doesn't excuse the fact it was there in the first place. There were a lot of bugs at release, and soft locks and crashes weren't unheard of. It really wasn't very good. But I do think it fit to acknowledge the changes and improvements made to the game since then, so it's welcome a different kind of category. Welcome to this weird little category. Even though I'm making comparisons, I won't be scoring this category and the changes made, but rather like any other category. This category will also not count for the final tally. So, going into it, I expected there to be less bugs this time, but still an amount. But what I got was actually not that bad. Now, maybe I just missed most of them, which is entirely possible, but I didn't experience that many bugs. Sure, there were a couple, but it really wasn't that bad. I expect I have to make another montage this time, but I guess I don't have to. There were some nice additions, like a fence on the main stage elevator for some reason, actual cameras on the walls, and animation with skeletons getting off their hooks. But with gameplay improvements, there aren't many. But I've learned, when you get down to the details, look at the nitty-gritty. No, not that gritty. You'll see that they ooze a sense of care and attention. But, looking at the details requires they don't look at the bigger stuff. The game, ignoring the bugs, still has many design problems, and ignoring those, the game still feels rushed. I mean, the game's characterization is garbage. Either they're mindless drones, or don't have enough screen time to develop a personality. But that's a rant I shouldn't bother starting. So this game is very well rounded, because all the coins have been cut off. But let's talk about the plot. No, not that. Or that. Or that. Or anything surrounding that. I want to discuss the missing children. Important plot point to be sure. But to really discuss this, let's put the first instance of the game talking about it.
I will miss you.
Freddy, if I leave now, nothing will change, will it? There will be more disappearances.
You know, I think it's bad writing to reveal such an important plot point at the end of the story. And it doesn't help when the characters have been magically infused with the knowledge of this happening, and are treated as such without the players ever knowing. There are, to the extent of my knowledge, only voice clips of the characters finding out about this. So, whose bright, shining, illuminating idea was it to take out the event of the characters finding out about an important plot point and changing nothing else, and not put it back in?
I'm free!
There's got to be the single most fundamental thing in quality assurance. Is your product coherent? Out of every single facet of this game, this is one of, if not the most baffling thing about it. Trust me when I say there's plenty more things to rant about, but I won't. The point is to say that there have been bug fixes, the game suffers with design decisions and other byproducts of the game being rushed. The only way to fix these would be essentially to remake the game, which is a very alluring idea. A man can dream. You know, this reminds me of that Miyamoto quote. Something, rushed games are bad, or whatever. But as for the score, even though it doesn't matter, I think, would be fair. So now it's time to look at all the scores I've given. So go on, look at your screen. Man, I freaking love numbers. So, even though I had forfeited this to do an announce impression again, I won't. But now it's time. This game gets a new out of 100 score of 51. That's 1 point lower than last time. Graphics got an extra point, boss design lost 1, music gained 1, replayability lost 1, and horror lost 1. Even though I had more fun on my second playthrough, apparently I think the game's slightly worse. So now it's time for final thoughts. I said originally the reason I scored the game so low is because I wasn't a fan. But I learned that's not the reason. The reason is because the game has problems. When I finally began to learn other people's opinions on the game, it seemed to either match my opinion, or were lower. Inconceivable! There were some with higher opinions, but they were uncommon. I eventually decided to try and figure out people's opinions on the game. I asked a group of people to score the game on the same 1 to 10 scale I'd give categories, and I got 5 responses. Yeah, it's a small sample size, but most responses I could muster. So these are the scores they gave me. They leaned more towards the higher end. If you average them out, you get 5.4. Although the guy who gave me this score maybe hadn't even played the game. You average out without his score, you get 5.25. They were all nice enough to provide some explanation with their scores, and two of them gave some rather long responses, but overall they seemed to echo some of my opinions. Here's some snippets. I give it a 4 for not being scary enough. I was very disappointed in the lighting and gameplay of Security Breach 2. It's too big, barely any scary aspects, and lacks that horrifying feel that came with the old-style FNAF games. The lore and endings also make no sense. Like, why would you get a comic book sequence? Why is Freddy being helpful in the first place? Burn Trap barely appears, looks like some broken old man who just makes quirky one-liners. The concept of being a child trapped in a mall at night and surviving until 6 AM while being hunted by animatronics is awesome, but the execution isn't good. The gameplay is flawed in design, and isn't taken into consideration the bugs and glitches the game has. The gameplay is a fetch quest running simulator with a lot of problems. The animatronic AI isn't clever and adaptive, and the staff fights only make the game more annoying. Why is Gregory in the Pizzaplex? Why does Vanny only have 5 minutes of screen time? Why is Afton present at the last minute? The point is, the story is very undercooked. The atmosphere and horror is barely present. Yes, daycare and endos are scary, but the game lacks unit horror and atmosphere. You can make a multi-level shopping mall with neon lights and alien-inspired architecture scary. Some of the environments look sick as heck, and that is a direct quote, but they don't make us feel uneasy or tense. And to, ironically summarize it in the best way anyone possibly could, very good concept, very poor execution. Heck, if the guy gave the game an 8 out of 10 comment on the horror. Now, I did get a 6th response, but all that guy said was balls, so I'm not sure how I would translate that into a score. But, anyway, very special thanks to all the people that responded. I guess, including the balls guy. So that's the end of our adventure, and chances are I won't be making this video a 3rd time. I hope. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. I hope to see you somewhere else. Alright, goodbye. Yep, goodbye. Bye-bye. So long. Bon voyage. That was awful. Just plain awful. Listen, I've done the stuff you wanted me to. I didn't complain. Very much. Don't you think you could find it in the goodness of your heart that I think exists to let me go for, like, the rest of my life?
Nah.
Oh, come on! You know, when are they gonna find out? I'm not gonna let me in the hospital anymore. Come on, don't you think spawn camping is kinda cheap?